I've had the privilege of working I say working, but really studying in an environment that is outside of the school setting, but that I was kind of recruited into to pursue. Study with a gentleman who was a former CIA operative. He and his wife run a firm called Identity Exchange that's based out of Seattle, Washington. And in getting to know them, I studied in a 12-week intensive study this past spring and summer. A lot of that was independent studies, some reading, and actually they assigned a life coach to us individually to kind of process some of the things we were learning. So it was a lot of, I guess you would call, self-help type work. The whole thrust of that was identity, knowing who you are. And knowing who one is, you can do anything, is really kind of the premise behind that. So in the beginning of that 12-week intensive, I was able to do 3 different weekends that were one-on-one, or in the small group. There's about 14 or 15 of us, with Mr. Jamie Winship, who's the former CIA operative that I mentioned. As they were in town that first weekend, I had this kind of epiphany moment that thought, well, let me look at this calendar. When are these other weekends lining up when he's coming in from Seattle? And the third one was right at the time school starts back for us. I got to thinking, he's going to be in town anyway. Maybe I just need to be bold and ask, is this something that would be doable to have him come speak to our students? And he's a very prolific speaker. So I went through the proper channels because of the organization that was sponsoring this cohort that I was a part of. And in communication with him, when I finally did email him after going through those channels, his response was very immediate and very quick, and it said, yes, by all means, all in, let's do it. So I'm learning from that. When given the opportunity, jump. And when he came here, he and I spoke probably a little bit of time beforehand. What do you want me to address? What are the issues that are on your heart and on your mind? I said, well, in Hawkins County, there's been a mindset that probably needs to be addressed. And some of that is a very generic one. It's in all of society. Sometimes you encounter the poverty mindset. And to address that poverty mindset, in essence, when you boil it down, is like, I'm not enough. And when one believes that, no matter what age, it affects you and it affects your life. So I've seen it at the tip of the spear, dealing with individual students, dealing with families, dealing with the outcomes. And in a school setting, it begins to feel like that's not fair. So if we can do anything to help equal that playing field for students and to help them to develop, then we're doing the right work. And when he showed up, he gave probably a 40 minute presentation to students. And it was verbal in front of the gym. And we actually have a link, thanks to our technology director, that's on our school website, Churchill Middle Schools, that I invite people to go watch. And it's very good, very intensive, and part of what he's addressing in that, and I love the examples he gave. He gave an example of how he was recruited into the CIA, and then again how his, at the time, 6th grade son heard his own identity and began to walk in that, not knowing. And if you watch the video, you'll be able to see exactly what that is, and he tells that story much better than I can. But he talks about 2 kinds of time. He talks about Chronos time, which is where we move through Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Kairos time that intersects with that. And the Kairos time are moments in life that define us. They may be little moments, they may be big moments, and we don't see those coming. But he said, the only thing that can keep you from reaching that is you doing this. Spinning, walking in circles. And he refers to that as the fear loop. And the fear loop is very prevalent when we react and when we're in a poverty mindset or any mindset that's negative to us that keeps us from moving forward. And worse yet, if others come along and say, hey, let's go rob the bank, let's go do drugs, these sort of things, and if it's people that are pulling you that way, they're not your friends. Your friends are going to be the ones that keep moving you forward to those unknown, unseen Kairos moments that are destined to happen for you. So the whole premise with that was great. And my thoughts were, I'm smart enough to know, and I've been in education long enough to know that one and done doesn't get it done. And we can swoop in a guest speaker who's very dramatic and dynamic, and then they leave and we're still here. But the follow-up work is as important. So the follow-up I began to think myself, what can we do? And the first thing I did was did an anonymous Google survey through our technology that our kids could respond to. And I got overwhelming results from that. Near 80% wanted to know more about their identity. And there were over 367, I think, responses, if I remember correctly, out of almost 382 students. Phenomenal. They wanted to know more about their identity. So, and the numbers may be a little off there, but it was a near 80%, I remember that. So I got to think, what can I do to address this? And I began to organize in my mind, because as an administrator, I'm always trying to protect instructional time. That's what we do in education, is we need to instruct. So how can I do this in a way that's going to address this need that kids are expressing, that their desire to know more about their identity, while still protecting instructional time? And I began to think, with our set schedule that we have, with our academic classes and with our intramurals, we can take a little bit of time from intramurals. And so I set up a rotating schedule, if you will, on bi-weekly, to pull students out of class and to go through them with them. And I thought, how many can I get to do this? And I started really big. And then I actually called my life coach who walked me through this cohort and was suggested to me, maybe you need to slow down a little bit. I said, okay. So I thought I'll start with a small group that wants to pursue this. And so Ms. Geis, who's one of our teachers here that I highly respect, and her viewpoints, she and I kind of vetted students by interest that had expressed it, and we allowed them the opportunity. We sent permission slips home to parents. We asked, and we had at the beginning we had a couple students that were not interested, if I remember correctly. So we got a couple more that were. From that, I formed what I would call a very watered down curriculum for this, so that students can have this bi-weekly for 6 weeks, begin to know about your identity, know who you are. At the point we're at now, we've been through about a third of that. We've had 2 meetings with this cohort group of students, and in doing that, they've done a personality assessment, because that's important to know kind of who am I, and they may not even know that yet. In doing a personality assessment, the follow-up we had today was an exercise I called lies on the floor, and we had posters with different lies on the floor, like I'm unworthy, I'm unloved, I'm abandoned, these type of things. And I asked the students to go stand next to the one that you identify with the most, and I did this with them, and Ms. Geis did as well. Then we asked them openly, do you want to share out anything? A couple of them did. Let them debrief on those emotions, those feelings about that. And then more importantly was what came next. We asked them to flip the poster over, and we already had pre-printed the truth on the other side. And the truth was simply Webster's antonyms of what those lies were. And I began to let them walk through that. And the point of that exercise was, what are you listening to? Others may bombard you with negativity, and if you choose to internalize that, but as you believe the truth and walk in it, you begin to think differently, which goes back to exactly what we're saying. So we're about approaching midway with this first cohort of students that we're doing this with, and the whole point is, it's like that story about the starfish, the gentleman that's throwing starfish back into the ocean, and the guy says, why are you doing that? There's millions of them out here. What mattered to that one? And if we can affect 1, 2, 12 students that can go out and then affect others, then I believe we're doing a good work and we're doing the right thing.